In 2019, a mechanic in Billings, Montana, posted a photo that quietly broke the internet in the Rust Belt community. It showed the underside of a 1997 Chevy pickup, 22 years old, driven through brutal winters of road salt, and the frame looked like it had just rolled off the factory floor. No professional undercoating, no expensive treatment, just a thin, dark, blue-black layer of something most people have never heard of. His secret cost him $3. $3 for a powder you can buy at a grocery store. $3 to mix with warm water in a plastic bucket. $3 to brush onto rusted steel and watch the corrosion literally transform, in real time, into a permanent, waterproof, paintable shield. No sanding down to bare metal, no grinding, no professional equipment. Now here is the part that should bother you. This is not new technology. The United States military used this exact chemistry to protect tanks, rifles, and landing craft during World War II. The British Royal Navy documented it in the 1850s. Roman legionnaires were treating their weapons with it 2,000 years ago. And if you walk into any hardware store right now and pick up a bottle of Rust Converter, one of those $15 to $30 bottles with aggressive branding, and flip it around to read the safety data sheet, you will find the same compound listed as the primary active ingredient. They didn't stop using it because it failed. They repackaged it, marked it up tenfold, and made absolutely sure you would never recognize the original. Welcome to Historia Prime. Today we are opening a vault that connects Roman blacksmiths to World War II battlefields, to the rusting truck frame sitting in your driveway right now. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to use this ancient chemistry yourself, for about the price of a cup of coffee. Part 1. The Accidental Discovery in Ancient Rome. 1,400 years before the first industrial factory ever opened, leather workers in ancient Rome stumbled onto something extraordinary, completely by accident. They were soaking raw animal hides in water filled with crushed oak bark. This was tanning, the ancient process of turning stiff, perishable animal skin into flexible, durable leather. The word itself comes from tannum, the Latin word for oak. Every leather workshop across the Roman Empire used massive stone vats filled with this dark, pungent brown liquid. The smell alone could knock you sideways from 50 paces, but something unexpected kept happening inside those vats. Something the tanners could not explain. Every iron tool that accidentally touched the tanning solution simply stopped corroding. Iron knives that would normally rust within days in the humid Roman air stayed clean and razor-sharp for months after a single soak. Iron buckles dropped into the vats by clumsy apprentices came out coated in a thin, dark, protective film that fiercely resisted both water and salt air. In the ancient world, useful knowledge traveled fast because survival depended on it. The tanners told the blacksmiths told the armorers, and the armorers, recognizing the military advantage, told the generals. By the 2nd century, Roman legionnaires were actively treating their iron weapons with concentrated oak bark extracts before undertaking long campaigns into the damp, hostile forests of Gaul and Germania. Military blacksmiths at frontier outposts soaked chainmail in tannin baths after every river crossing and every rainstorm. And we know this is not legend because garrison records carved into wooden tablets at Vindolanda, a Roman fort near Hadrian's Wall, explicitly reference iron preservation baths using bark solutions. Think about that. A 2,000-year-old military maintenance manual describing the exact same chemistry that can save your modern truck frame today. The Romans had no microscopes, no periodic table, no laboratory equipment. What they had was an intense, disciplined power of observation and the wisdom to trust what nature was showing them. Part 2. A global phenomenon, convergent chemistry. Here is what makes this story extraordinary. Rome was not alone. When a universal enemy like rust threatens every civilization that works with iron, human ingenuity finds the same answer. Independently, on opposite sides of the planet, separated by centuries and oceans. Let me take you to feudal Japan, because nowhere on Earth was the relationship between iron and natural chemistry more refined than in the workshops of Japanese swordsmiths. Making a katana was not just metalwork, it was a spiritual practice that could take months for a single blade. The swordsmith folded steel dozens of times, hammered it, quenched it, shaped it. But here is the problem few people talk about. A katana has a composite structure. The razor-sharp cutting edge is hard, high-carbon steel. But the spine, the back of the blade, is softer, more flexible iron. That softer iron was extremely vulnerable to humidity. In Japan's subtropical climate, an untreated blade core could develop rust spots within weeks. The solution? Kakishibu, fermented persimmon juice. Japanese craftsmen would carefully brush this tannin-rich liquid onto the soft iron core just before the final clay tempering process. The tannins bonded with the iron at the molecular level, creating a stable protective layer before the clay was even applied. It was so effective and so closely guarded that the specific kakishibu formulations used by different swordsmithing schools became trade secrets passed only from master to apprentice. Now travel with me 6,000 miles west to the Yoruba ironworkers of West Africa. These were master metallurgists who had been smelting and forging iron since at least 500 BC, centuries before iron became common across much of Europe. The Yoruba faced a brutal environmental enemy: 6 months of tropical monsoon, with humidity so intense that unprotected iron could develop visible rust overnight. Their answer came from the forest: tannin extracts pulled from shea bark and acacia pods. They painted this dark liquid onto hoe blades, machetes, and agricultural tools before the rainy season. The result? Tools that survived 6 months of relentless, corrosive tropical moisture, while untreated iron crumbled. Persian metalworkers in Isfahan used crushed pomegranate rind, over 28% tannic acid, to protect their legendary sword blades from desert humidity. Deep in South America, Mapuche craftsmen used the extract of the quebracho tree, one of the most tannin-dense woods on Earth, to preserve iron tools they traded from Spanish colonists. 5 continents, dozens of cultures, thousands of years apart. Every single one arrived at the same conclusion: certain plant compounds stop iron from corroding. This is not folklore. This is convergent chemistry, the same molecular truth discovered independently through observation, necessity, and generational wisdom. Part 3. The Science. How rust becomes its own cure. For 2 millennia, this knowledge lived in the hands of craftsmen. It worked, and that was enough. But nobody could explain why, until 1813. In a cramped laboratory in Paris, a French chemist named Michel-Eugène Chevreul isolated tannic acid as a pure compound for the first time in recorded history. He meticulously documented its reaction with iron oxide and published his findings in one of the most respected scientific journals in Europe. For the first time, modern science could put precise language to what blacksmiths, tanners, and warriors had known since antiquity. Here is the chemistry, and it is genuinely beautiful. Tannic acid reacts aggressively with iron 3 oxide, the flaky, orange, destructive compound we call rust, and converts it into a completely different substance called iron 3 tannate, also known as ferric tannate. Iron tannate is a dark, blue-black compound that is completely insoluble in water. It does not flake, it does not spread, it does not weaken the underlying metal, and most importantly, it bonds to the steel surface at the molecular level, permanently. Now here is the distinction that changes everything, and I need you to understand it clearly. Chevreul described this as a chemical conversion, not a surface coating. That difference is enormous. A traditional coating, like the synthetic primers you buy at the auto parts store, sits on top of the rust. It is a bandage. Eventually, moisture finds a microscopic scratch, the coating lifts, and the rust is exposed again. You are back to square one, reaching for your wallet. But a conversion transforms the rust itself into the protective barrier. The existing corrosion, the very thing destroying your metal, becomes the shield that protects it. The disease becomes the cure. Part 4. The Military Proving Ground. By 1850, the British Royal Navy began formal testing of tannic acid solutions on the iron hulls of warships docked at Portsmouth Harbour. The results, documented in Admiralty maintenance logs, still preserved at the National Archives in Kew, were remarkable. Ships treated with tannin solutions showed significantly less hull corrosion over a 5-year period compared to identical ships treated with standard lead-based paints, which were far more toxic and far more expensive. But the real stress test came during the deadliest conflict in human history. When World War II erupted in 1939, rust became a full-scale military emergency. Sherman tanks shipped across the damp, salty Atlantic arrived in North Africa with corroded track links and seized turret rings. Rifles stored in the suffocating humidity of the Pacific Islands jammed shut within weeks as tropical moisture ate through standard oil coatings. Every piece of corroded equipment was a soldier who could not fight, a vehicle that could not move, a weapon that could not fire. In 1941, the United States War Department launched a materials preservation research program at the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. Researchers tested over 200 different anti-corrosion compounds on bare steel panels inside accelerated salt spray chambers, essentially simulating years of harsh environmental exposure in a matter of weeks. The results, declassified in 1947, are striking. A 4% solution of tannic acid applied to pre-rusted steel panels withstood over 1,000 hours of continuous salt spray without failure. The best-performing synthetic competitor broke down at roughly 600 hours. The military's response was immediate and massive. Procurement officers began ordering tannic acid in bulk for depots across 3 theatres of war. Jeep chassis, ammunition cans, rifle barrels, steel bridge components, landing craft hinges, all treated with the same simple, natural compound that Roman blacksmiths had discovered in their tanning vats 2,000 years earlier. Let that sink in for a moment. The most powerful military machine in history, fighting a war that would determine the fate of civilization, chose a $3 plant extract over every expensive synthetic alternative the chemical industry could offer. And it was not a close call. Part 5. Why you have never heard of this. So if this chemistry protected Roman swords, British warships and American tanks, why is it not in every garage in the world? The answer is not a conspiracy. It is something more ordinary and, honestly, more frustrating. Economics. After 1945, the American chemical industry had a problem. Companies like DuPont and Sherwin-Williams had spent the war years investing heavily in manufacturing facilities for synthetic petroleum-based primers and rust inhibitors. They had built sales teams, distribution networks, and marketing departments around products that cost 10 to 50 times more than natural tannic acid. A powder that any person could mix in a coffee can for $3 was not a product opportunity. It was a threat to the entire business model. And the business model won, not through some dramatic cover-up, but through the simple grinding logic of profit margins. Here is how it works. Tannic acid cannot be patented. It is a naturally occurring compound found in oak bark, tea leaves, chestnut wood, grape seeds, and dozens of other plant sources. You cannot build a subscription business around a powder that costs less than a fast food meal. You cannot create a service franchise empire selling a treatment that anyone can apply with a foam brush in their driveway. And you certainly cannot justify a $500 dealership rust protection package when the active ingredient can be brewed from a box of black tea bags. So the industry did what industries do when a cheap, natural solution threatens an expensive revenue stream. They repackaged it. Those rust converter products you see at every hardware store, selling for $15 to $30 a bottle. Pull up the safety data sheet on virtually any major brand. You will find tannic acid listed as the primary active ingredient. They take $3 worth of naturally occurring powder, dissolve it in petroleum solvents, pour it into a branded bottle, and sell it back to you at 10 to 15 times its actual cost. After 1978, consumer product reformulation guidelines made this even easier. Manufacturers gained the ability to list active ingredients under proprietary trade names. Simple tannic acid became proprietary rust conversion compound or stabilized oxide modification technology. Same ancient molecule, new vocabulary, dramatically higher price. Now, let me be honest about something, because I think it actually makes this story more interesting, not less. I am not telling you that tannic acid replaces every modern coating for every situation. Industrial environments with extreme chemical exposure, constant submersion, or temperatures above 300 degrees require specialized products. Commercial rust converters do add stabilizers and surfactants that make application easier and shelf life longer. There are legitimate reasons those products exist. But for 90% of what everyday people deal with, truck frames, hand tools, cast iron cookware, outdoor equipment, farm gear, the active chemistry is tannic acid, and the markup between what you pay and what that chemistry actually costs is staggering. The US auto parts aftermarket generates over $300 billion in annual revenue. Corrosion-related repairs account for roughly 30% of that total. That is around $90 billion a year flowing out of our pockets, because most people have never been told that the permanent fix costs $3.45. Part 6. Reclaim the knowledge, the complete method. So let us take the power back. Here is the exact method, the same fundamental chemistry the Romans used, the British Navy documented, and the US military deployed across 3 continents. Step 1. Purchase food-grade tannic acid powder. Any grocery store, health food supplier, or online bulk retailer will carry it. A 100-gram bag costs between $3 and $5, and that is enough to treat approximately 40 square feet of heavily rusted surface. Step 2. Measure 4 grams of the powder and dissolve it into 100 milliliters of warm water. Stir gently until fully dissolved. The liquid should turn the deep, rich color of strong black tea. That is it. You just made a rust conversion solution. Step 3. Take a wire brush or coarse steel wool and scrub the rusted surface briefly. You only need to knock off the loose, flaking material. You do not need to sand it down to bare, shiny metal, and this is critical to understand. The solution needs the existing rust to work. It converts the corrosion rather than requiring you to remove it. Step 4. Apply the solution evenly across the rusted area using a foam brush, a cotton rag, or a spray bottle. Now watch. Within 10 to 15 minutes, you will see the rust change color, shifting from sickly orange-brown to a dense, dark blue-black. That visible color change is the molecular conversion happening before your eyes. Iron 3 oxide is becoming iron 3 tannate in real time. A quick safety note. Tannic acid is food-grade and non-toxic, but at this concentration, it can irritate skin and eyes. Wear basic rubber gloves and avoid splashing. Common sense, nothing dramatic. Let the treated surface air dry completely, about 2 to 4 hours, depending on temperature and humidity. Then apply a second coat using the same process. 2 coats ensure maximum conversion depth and thorough protection. After the second coat cures, the surface is permanently stabilized and ready for any top coat you want. Paint, oil, wax, rubberized undercoating, polyurethane. And here is a bonus the commercial products never mention. The converted iron tannate surface actually bonds more effectively to paint and top coats than perfectly bare polished steel does. For your camp tools, axes, knives, hatchets, apply the conversion solution, then finish with a thin coat of boiled linseed oil or melted beeswax. For vehicle frames and undercarriages, convert the rust, then follow with rubberized spray or a film of used motor oil. For cast iron cookware, apply a light coat to the rust spots, let it convert, wash it, and re-season in the oven as you normally would. 100 grams of this powder is enough to treat an entire full-size truck frame, a complete set of outdoor tools, and a full season of cast iron maintenance. Total cost, $3 and about 45 minutes of your afternoon. Compare that to a professional automotive rust treatment service charging $500 to $800 for what is, at the molecular level, the same reaction. Every great civilization that worked with iron understood this truth. Roman legionnaires knew it, standing over oak bark tanning pits on the misty frontiers of their empire. Japanese swordsmiths knew it, carefully brushing persimmon lacquer onto folded steel in candlelit workshops. Yoruba ironworkers knew it, painting shea bark extract onto their machetes before the monsoon rains came. Even your own great-grandparents likely knew it, boiling oak galls in a cast-iron kettle on the back porch every autumn to protect the farm tools that kept the family alive. Today, $90 billion in annual corrosion repair revenue depends on you never learning any of their names. $15 bottles of rebranded tannic acid on hardware store shelves depend on you never once flipping the bottle around to read the ingredients list. But here is the truth that no markup can change. Chemistry does not care about corporate brand strategy. Iron tannate does not expire, and oak trees have never charged a licensing fee. The past is not a collection of dusty dates and forgotten ruins. It is a survival manual, one that teaches us to see the resources hiding in plain sight, to question why simple solutions carry complex price tags, and to remember that self-reliance is not a lifestyle brand. It is the oldest human tradition there is. If this video changed how you look at the rust on your axe head, your truck frame, or your cast iron pan, share it. Every share puts a crack in the wall built around knowledge that was never anyone's to lock away. Subscribe to Historia Prime. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside is the one thing every camper throws away that could generate enough heat to survive a total winter blackout. Stay curious, stay self-reliant. I will see you next time.